why this play and why now? There's so many reasons.
There are a lot of reasons, yes. So this, so my wife Karen brought this play to me almost like 8 months ago, and said, "You should look at this play." And I did, and I was like, "This is really an interesting idea, and it sort of fits in where we are right now as a society, and I want to investigate this more." And I read it a couple of times, and then I brought it to Lisa, and Lisa was like, "Yeah, let's do this." I feel like, basically the reason why we're doing this play right now is that I feel like we're in a sort of similar moment of peril right now in the world. And I sort of think that reminding ourselves and each other that of our individual responsibility to each other is a really important thing to keep in mind, and that's really more important than we think it is. That we actually that the little tiny things that we do with our fellow man and caring for them is something that makes a bigger difference than we think it does. And so that's why I wanted to do this show. So
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Yeah, it's an important time for a work like this. We often do small dramas, smaller cast dramas in our fall show, and especially in an election year, we have a lot to be thinking about in society. And I keep thinking of the inspector's line, "We do not live alone."
mm-hmm.
It's, yeah, very powerful. That was one of the things that stood out to me so much when I read the script, and I was so glad that we chose it. Speaking of Lizzie, who plays Eva, and Edna, I love there are I don't I think everyone here has seen the show, so I don't think that there will be any spoilers, but if we are spoiling anything, raise your hand. Um, there are these wonderful flashback scenes that Mark has created where Ava, of course, we learn right at the beginning, close to the beginning of the play, is that she's no longer with us. And we see in these flashback scenes, we see so much about her character and so much of her journey and what had led her there. And it's so poignant. And I wondered if this was a common technique that directors use for this play. I think it's done in the movie where you see flashback scenes. But tell us about building those scenes and why those were so important to you.
I don't know if I mean, like, they're in the 2015 film version with David Thewlis, there's a character who plays Eva, but I don't think she's the same actor who plays Edna. Um, I wanted it to be the same actor who played Edna because I wanted it to make a point about sort of um, the sort of idea that these people, that Edna, Eva, Daisy, those characters are to the Burlings and to these guys are all sort of seen as sort of the same kind of people,
Mm.
and that they're not necessarily um, um, held in the same regard they as they see each other as. So and so I wanted to make a point about that um, that I wanted those characters to be tied together so that we sort of made the connection that these people are very similar to the Burlings, um, um, and that at the end of the show we realize that Edna is someone with a life who is important and has something to say and has something to offer, and um, that at the very, very end of the show, which I constructed myself, it was not, this is not in the play. I added this to the end of the play, that Sheila finally sees her at the end, and that's a moment of growth, and that's a moment of change potentially that happens.
I was
So
wondering if you created that. That's a
I did
lovely
create that.
moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sydney's character Sheila has just such an interesting journey and an arc in some ways more than any other character, and having that kind of just that finishing touch is really, yeah, it gave me goosebumps when I saw it for the first time. It's really
Oh,
lovely.
good. Oh, good.
I have a photo that I really like of Eva Lizzie here with Gerald, and let me just spotlight this. You kind of have the present and the past going on together, and they of course have such an interesting relationship, and I believe it's said at one point that he seemed to care for her in a
Mhm.
way that many of the other characters on stage don't, and I really love this photo. Heren, do you remember what's happening right there? What are you saying to her?
So this is where I'm recalling the events of when I first met her, and then I noticed that she was in distress. So I'm recalling all the events of what happened at the night at the county hotel when I went to take her back to make sure that she's safe and all that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's one of those moments. It feels like a very Minority Report. I don't know, that kind of,
Oh yeah.
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 To the going back in the past and then forward in time, but in that sequence. So yeah, that's all I
Absolutely.
wanted to say.
Yeah. And I love kudos here to our costume designer, Brittany Mellerson, because I love the way her dress, the color of her dress stands out in this moment too.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
She's
gorgeous.
wearing a different dress now in the show,
Oh,
just so you know. Yeah. But
well,
anyway,
oh, okay. Well, then I'll just take.
the dress does make an appearance, but it's
Yeah, that photo was taken at her last dress rehearsal. Well, because I wondered if that was the same dress she was holding up before when she's in this show.
yes, that is the
Yeah.
dress that she holds up.
So
Yes.
the dress is still
Yeah.
in the show. It just plays.
It is still in the show. Yes. It was an expensive dress. It has to make an
It
appearance.
has to make an appearance. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Heren. I want to jump over to Erik at this point because Arthur is Sir Arthur, the Burling's patriarch. In the beginning of the play, there's so much of the plot in this stage is commanded by Sir Arthur. And let's pop up his photo here.
He's not Sir yet.
I
No, he's not.
know, I know. Yeah, yeah, he's not Sir. Oh, look, Arthur.
He
Okay,
wants to be Sir.
Erik had Sir Arthur on his little Zoom name, and then he took off the
Oh,
Sir. This is a terrific shot, and it's also kind of like a Titanic shot because he looks like he's on the just on the Titanic there, and it's beautiful, beautiful get up. Erik, it is so great to have you back at City Lights, and you have
Nice to be back.
yeah, and for those of you who didn't see him in previous shows, you missed out. He has played so many strong and complex and often not so sympathetic characters. And the Alabama story, he played a state senator who was trying to ban a book because it had a black rabbit and a white rabbit getting married. That was a very powerful role. And in Eurydice, you played, I believe the character was called the Nasty Interesting Man. Is that right?
Lord of the Underworld.
And
Yes.
Lord of the Underworld.
Mhm.
So, not all sunshine and Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. You play these really just strong characters. Arthur's got a big voice, he's got fervent ideas. Tell us about how you approach this character and how you found that humanity in him, because he's not always very sympathetic.
Well, yeah, I play a lot of heavies because I'm just a big dude. So, and I tower over people on stage. So, like, who should be the bad guy? Obviously, but in any role, but especially villains, you always try to find some form of humanity in that person. Like, wow, is you know this guy just 100% jerk, or there more depth to it. Nah, I think makes you know, the bad guy a little more interesting. The approach to the role was the dialect work, because that really intimidated me. In fact, I almost didn't audition because it's like not a dialect that I've ever done. You know, I've always avoided them like the plague because it really bothers me watching American actors do really bad British accents. And you know, understandably, but I don't want to approach something I don't think I have the tools to do. But my girlfriend loves this play. And she says, you should do it. Just go for it. Who cares? You know these people. I said, oh, yeah, I do. And they're great people. So, and I'll be in the area. So I did. But before I did, I hired a dialect coach and worked with Kimberly Tonkel like 3 times. Because if I was going to do this, I wanted to do the best I could and try it. And she's a very good dialect coach. And she assured me, you know, the direction I was heading was a good direction. So then the character, he speaks for himself. Literally, he just speaks for himself. I don't think there's anything that complex about him. You know, he represents in the play this hubris, this metaphor for the Titanic itself, I think. And his whole world just is just picked apart. And I love to play the downfall. I like to come on big and confident and so happy with myself and pleased with ourselves, as he says, and then at the end just be what's happening, you know, which I think people should experience from this play. It makes a statement. It uses it uses the genre of a murder mystery that everyone loves, but there's a lot more to it than just the thrill of watching a mystery.
Yeah.
It's supposed to help us realize. I think that was Priestley's intent when he wrote it in 45, just after World War II. And this guy lived through that entire era. So he had a point to make, and I think it's a good one. You know, and it feels good to do it with people who know what they're doing.
Yes, really, such a strong cast. That was one thing I noticed in that. I don't know if any of you reviews, but I think it's okay for me to say that the Mercury News really said just excellent cast, excellent casting. So I love that you started with the dialect coach, because actors, you know, we can start in different places. Sometimes we put on shoes that help us feel more like our characters. Sometimes it's the dialect. Sometimes it's the chemistry with another actor, and that's so interesting that you started with the dialect coach. And Arthur's way of speaking is very different from Sybil's. They are different and Doll, you might want to jump in on this too, that they're different classes. Their family is comfortable, but Sybil is tell us about Sybil in relation to Arthur.
Yeah, Sybil's super posh. She's super upper class. But I think during this period in history, a lot of those super upper class families were losing a lot of their money. They just didn't have income. They had status and they had title, but they had manners, but they didn't have income. So I think her marrying someone who's maybe of a lower class, but definitely like an up and comer as far as business goes, was a great choice for her. She might consider herself slumming it a little bit, but I think for her it's the right choice. She can keep living the way she's accustomed to, and she doesn't have to worry about losing everything, which there was a lot of that going on. Family members being chopped up and used as barracks or schools or sold off in pieces or whatever. She doesn't have to do that. So I think she's very about her own comfort.
And the class distinction between both of them is in the dialect, because they're very standard RP British, upper class. And I have a bit of Northern Yorkshire, so that's one of the things I worked on. A lot of vowel work, a lot of diphthongs that, like I'll say "toe," dry. There's a little lilt in there.
Yeah.
That defines him as having been country or lower class and worked his way up into the position he's in today.
Yeah, definitely hear that.
That's fun. That's really fun to do, and to bounce. And we're really lucky to have Richard playing the inspector because he's also our dialect coach, but I didn't know that. I didn't know him for the audition. So he's really helped keep it on track. Where
Yes.
Arthur, when he gets excited or upset or emotional, he slips more into that northern Yorkshire kind of dialect.
Of course. And we heard a lot of Richard's work in our 2016 production of Calendar Girls. He worked with the actors, and you could definitely hear that. Now, I see Richard is here, but his camera and mic are off. So he was having some trouble with connection earlier. That's so interesting. Oh, there you are. Hi, Richard. Inspector Ghoul in his car, off to
He's
the
out
next.
inspecting.
Are you
Are you outside my house?
Yes.
So
I'm
glad
looking
you're
through the
here.
letterbox.
You're going to go be an uninvited guest somewhere else and mess up some
Yes.
party.
Yeah,
I've got to
out
keep,
rooting
I've
lives,
got to
eh?
keep in practice.
One of the times I saw the show, the people in front of me or the people next to me, they turned to me at intermission and they said, "Is the inspector really from Britain? He must be. His accent is flawless." And I kind of wanted to say, "No, he's from Alabama," or something, just to see what they would say. But I was like, yeah, he is. Welcome, Richard.
Hello.
I was just talking about your work on Calendar Girls. Have you been on our stage before, or have you worked with City Lights just as a dialect coach?
Just as the dialect coach. Yep.
Wonderful. Well, it's wonderful to have you on our stage for this one.
Hey,
So
it's being
glad.
fun. Yes.
Yeah.
And I get to be with all these great characters.
It's it's an ensemble cast in the best possible way, that you just have everyone has a moment, everyone has a story. Beautiful. Doll, I wanted to say one more thing. I have a photo of Sybil. I'm not sure if you've seen this one, but I do very much like this one because it has the Victrola in it. Mark,
great.
where did that come from? The Victrola, is it real?
It is
Oh, you just got muted.
it is real. It belongs to City Lights, and it's up in the loft. And Ron has had it for years, and when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! Let's use it." So it's so good.
And a small little tidbit: the Victrola, and Richard crossed paths with Pygmalion at the Pear, I think, like 11 years ago. So it's been around.
Oh, there's often so many interesting stories about props, couches, and all kinds of things. And Doll, this is such a great shot of you. I mean, that is Sybil. That is Sybil all over. Is that your own hairpiece too?
That is a wig.
Yeah. And is it?
I've got dual tone hair, which doesn't do very well for 1912.
So do
But,
I.
So I went with that. I'm actually impressed. It looks good from here.
Looks
So
great.
I'm very happy it's working out so well.
No, it looks great.
Yeah.
Another great shot by Christian Pizzarani. And I also wanted to say about Doll is that that Doll is a connoisseur of mysteries. She directed our production of The Hollow in 2022, which was just a fantastic show. And is it your first time on the stage?
It is my second time on the stage. I did a Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh, before my
here,
time.
like
Okay.
way back when, in the Ross Nelson days. So
Okay.
yeah, it was a very long time. I played Oberon, King of the Fairies. They decided
Wonderful.
Nice.
to make all the fairies female. It was awesome.
I love it. And Doll knows just a little bit about Shakespeare, just
I
a
do.
tiny bit. You are the resident dramaturg, right, at Silicon Valley Shakespeare?
I am. Yeah. When the company first started, it was started by a couple people who were really, really excited to do a theater company, but they didn't know anything about Shakespeare. And I did. And so hung out with them, taught a lot of people. Shakespeare, went back, got my master's degree, kept learning and growing. And yeah, I love it. It's great too, because like Shakespeare and Agatha Christie are two of the like best-selling authors of all time. I think the Bible is the only thing that outranks them both. So it's yeah, it's super fun for me. I love mysteries. I love Shakespeare, and this has a little bit of both of that kind of feel.
Yeah.
It's got that whodunit feel, and also that everybody's got a tragic flaw.
Everybody does.
Pride goeth before a fall type.
Indeed. And I think you might have one other project planned at City Lights this season.
I do. I'm going to be directing The Mousetrap, another Agatha Christie coming up. And I'm very, very excited.
Yeah.
It's going to be wonderful.
We do like mysteries here. And we do love having Doll work on them. So
I get very excited about them.
As well you should. And I think Sydney and Heren have also worked with Silicon Valley Shakespeare, right? And Miles. Am I forgetting anybody? Anybody else from SVS? Oh.
Nope.
So
those are our SVS group.
Yeah. So we are, and artistic director Angie Higgins from SVS will be directing our production of Truth. So we have a really nice relationship with that company. Yay. I want to continue the kudos by saying how much I love the lighting and the productions and the set. So I'm going to just pop this up here. I absolutely love this photo because look how Miles stands out in the lighting. It's just gorgeous. So Paul Skelton was our lighting designer, and our scenic designer is Ron Gasparnetti. And I think Ron did the projections too. Is that right, Mark?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So just absolutely beautiful work. And that all white set, it's stunning. So kudos to everyone. I wanted to ask a general question. Let me turn that off to everyone, all the artists here, because I was first exposed to this play reading it, and I read it several times before I saw it on stage. And it's a thriller, but it's also a mystery, and there's all kinds of twists and turns, which I loved. I would love to hear from the artists. Anybody wants to jump in? Maybe Sydney, we should start with you because you haven't had a chance to say much. When you were, oh, what a face. When you were first introduced to this play, either on stage or reading it, like what jumped out at you the most? Was there a plot twist that you just loved? Was there a moment when you're like, yeah, they got theirs? Like, what pulled you into the story?
Well, so my first exposure to the play was when I saw the announcement for City Lights, and I was like, oh, cool, that actually fits in my schedule for once. I can audition.
Nice.
So then I did the actor thing, and I went and found a little PDF and downloaded it and got every bit of exposure I could, watched every version that I could get my hands on. It was like, tell me what this is. And it was funny because when I opened it up, I was like, oh, cool, it's like an Agatha Christie. And then I read it, and I was like, oh, no, it's not an Agatha Christie. Oh, this is very much not an Agatha Christie. But it really did take me on such a journey. I think, gosh, I don't know. I think one of the things that really just jumped out to me was just the intelligence of the writing and the ability to just be incredibly witty in even sometimes the most darkest of times. And yeah, that's what I appreciated most about his writing style, and my appreciation for him has only grown as I've become very intimately familiar with the text and grow to understand every inch of it.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we started about how a play evolves, how a production evolves as the run goes on, and I feel like as an actor, you're always discovering new things in the play. It's like, oh, that hits a different way, or that I didn't realize that's why he chose that word. It's sometimes you see a production on opening night and you go back and you see it again on closing weekend, and it's a kind of a different animal. It's a beautiful thing about it. Anybody else want to jump in? Do you have any of our artists or any of our audience members favorite moments or just cool plot twists where you're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming? Doll.
My husband and I actually during the pandemic, we love British mysteries. We watch BritBox, we watch Poirot, we watch all of them. And we ran out. Like we couldn't find something we hadn't watched. And literally, like I was just scrolling through and I was like, there must be something. And I was like, oh, an Inspector Calls. We haven't seen this. It's Stephen Thewlis. I like him. And we started watching it. And we were like, I was like, it's like a movie. It's not a serial. So, okay, we'll see what's going on. And we literally just about 15, 20 minutes in, couldn't stop. And usually like we're that couple that pauses every few minutes and chats with each other. And then it takes us 5 hours to watch a movie. But we didn't, we just sat there and just watched it. And at the end, we were just like, that was really, really good. I'd never heard of it. I've never seen it. I now work with British people who are like, that's in our DNA. Like we study it at school and it's everything. And so I went and I looked it up and just loved it. And I actually wanted to talk to Angie Higgins at SBS about us doing it because I was like, this is like an innovative, innovating the classics. That's like part of our mission statement. This is a classic and this would be a good one to like think about. And she's got, of course, stacks and stacks of scripts that she's like, oh, okay, I'll put it down on I'll put it at the bottom of the pile and we'll get to it when we get to it. And I was just kind of like, and then the next thing I knew, City Lights announced their season and it was the first one they announced. And I lost my mind. I was so excited. And I told my husband, I told James, I was like, I need to audition for this one because I want to be Sybil Burling. And he was like, you have to go audition for this one. So yes, you need to be Sybil Burling. And was so excited. I think I babbled quite a bit to Mark about how much I love Mrs. Burling and how excited I was to be there. And it's been a great experience. Number one, this cast is fantastic. Like we all get along very well. And there's a comfort in working with each other. There's no ego. It's all encouragement. It's very, you just feel like you belong there. And it's a wonderful atmosphere. And Mark is a very intellectual director, which I'm a nerd. And so I was nerding out on everything. And so for me, this is my favorite moment in the show. And it's just, I think for me and Erik as Arthur, my favorite moment is when I first walk on stage. There's a projection on the floor that looks like ice. And for some reason, when I walk onto that, it's like really stepping from this outside world into this new creation. It's really like stepping into something. And I always kind of just take a minute and stare at the floor because it just looks so different. And I always turn, and then we go to sit down and I look at my husband to make sure we're sitting down at the same time. And when we both freeze, it just feels like we have that moment frozen in time, frozen on the ice, and then coming to life. I love it. That's my favorite moment. It's such a pretty projection too. I mean,
beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
Yes.
But it feels very otherworldly. And I really do love that. I'm babbling again.
No, babbling is good. Mark, you unmuted. Did you want to add something? You look like you wanted to add something. No. Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to add something.
No, I didn't. I'm glad you like the projection. That's great.
It is gorgeous. I mean, it feels so, I keep saying Titanic, but it has the chill and the that's coming and you don't know, but we do. Yeah,
that's kind of the point of the ice. I mean, and the whole pre-show sound effect. If anyone registered that, it's singing ice from somebody sticks a microphone underneath a frozen lake, and it's the sound of the lake popping and groaning and things like that. And that's what that sound effect is for the pre-show. It's all
very
that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Shout out to our sound designer as well, George Pasaras.
And
beautiful work.
And it's not unintentional that the set floating in space kind of looks like an iceberg a little bit too.
I didn't think of that until right now. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is what changed everything. The iceberg changed everything. 1912 was the beginning of everything changing.
Yeah.
I think that Priestley did that very intentionally. So
I've been listening to a podcast about JFK, and that makes me think of 1963 changing everything in another way. You have all these moments in time. Nice point. Doll just said in the chat, the Burlings are their own iceberg. I see it. Yeah. I have another photo I want to pop up here of the inspector and Sheila. because, I mean, I suppose one could say the inspector is the iceberg in a way. We have a lot of fantastic photos of the two of them, and then there's Miles in the background as Erik. Great moment, great shot. And as I mentioned before, Sheila goes on one of the most dramatic journeys in the play. And then Richard has this really unusual part where he's kind of the cipher. He's all knowing and mysterious, and he's not really who he seems to be. Richard, who is the inspector? Oh, you're muted. Oh, just when we were going to learn who the inspector is.
Hey,
He's like, I told you, but I was muted and I'll never say it again.
yeah.
Who do you think the
who's-
inspector is?
Who is the inspector? Is he all their consciousness? And let me. Is he each individual's consciousness? Is he a relative of the dead girl? Is he a time traveler? Is he? We can keep adding things to it. And can you hear me?
Yeah. I hadn't thought of the time traveler one. That's a good one.
Because I sort of know in some ways I know. I want to see if they know what really happened.
Yeah.
And I have a good idea, and I want to check up to see if the stories match or what they claim to say. I don't think Mr. Croft gives us everything, just as the character.
At the end of the day, Richard is the only one who needs to know who the inspector is. You know,
Yeah,
if Richard knows, that's all that needs to happen.
exactly.
He's the one that knows, and that's all we need.
Well said.
Because I'm not sure I know. So
That was going to be my next question.
as long as Richard knows, that's all we need.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, you could go on like Reddit and people have all kinds of theories.
Yes.
Yes.
But I'm sure that every actor who plays the inspector maybe has a different idea of who the inspector is. Yeah, Heren.
We had one audience member give the funniest comment about who they thought the inspector was, and me and Richard were just like, huh? So the audience member said that they thought that it was that person who murdered Edna. or no, not Eva Smith, sorry, who murdered Eva Smith. And we're like, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of like, okay, I don't see how, but sure. I mean, if it took you to that place, why not?
The audience is thinking, and that's okay. The people next to me said they thought at intermission they thought the inspector was Sheila's father.
Yeah, we also heard that one.
Yeah,
too.
so I'm sure you've heard that one. Oh, Doll just thought. Doll, did you just hear that for the first time?
Yeah, my brother thought the inspector was the one who had killed. He thought that the inspector was the murderer.
Interesting.
He did too. Yeah, but no, I never heard that.
Yeah, they were very, very convinced.
Or the one that we got the most was God.
God.
Yeah.
Or angel.
Or like voice of reason.
Well, it's interesting. He uses a plural at one point. He says that you have the effect on the young ones. He said, or something. We often do. We often have the most effect on the young ones. And I'm like, who's we? Are we like a chorus of angels, or who? So that was fascinating to me that he was plural. There's a comment here in the chat from Dan. Hi, Dan. Dan has a question. Wait, do we want to say anything else about who the inspector is before we take Dan's question? Sydney's thinking about it. Huh? No. Okay. You looked very thoughtful. Dan has a question, and then also I have a question for you, Sydney, but we'll do this question first. Dan says, are we intended to take the phone call at the very end of the play at face value in terms of who is calling and what information is conveyed? Or is it possible it might not be what it seems, just like the inspector? Any idea what the playwright intended?
Well, my character takes the phone call, so I'll take a stab at answering that. Yes, that phone call is really from the police station. Just like when Gerald calls the hospital, he's really talking to the hospital to find out if a girl had committed suicide. That's that telephone is an extension to the rest of the world these people live in. What's not real or what's in question is the actual inspector himself. You know, and so what maybe
Correct.
what it raises for an audience member is like, well, what is real, what isn't real, you know? And I think that's intended to maybe not confuse you, but to make you really think about reality in general, you know? And so it's a device. I mean, the whole play is a device, Dan. He's using a genre that was wildly popular at the time, wildly popular in 1912, wildly popular in the 40s when he wrote it, and it's still very popular genre of theater. That's why Agatha Christie's probably one of the highest, selling authors. But so it's intended. He's using that genre to sort of fool you into think you're just watching a whodunit. So your question is a really good question because you're questioning the reality of what's going on in the story. Just like I think J.B. Priestley wants us to question the reality we're living in, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, perfect sense. Yeah, and it's I mean, that's the beauty of a play like this, that you can be talking about it and discussing it. And we love plays at City Lights that you talk about all the way home in the car and the next morning when you wake up. Beautiful.
Doll, I had the same reaction you did. I'd heard of An Inspector Calls. I knew it was a title that existed in the world of theater, but I had no idea. And Karen and I watched it too, and she had seen it before. And usually we pause and wait and talk. I couldn't take my eyes off the story. I just couldn't take my eyes off it to the very end. And at the end, I just felt I was just affected by it. It had an emotional impact on me. In the play, however, we are finding lots of humor. And I wasn't laughing during the movie, but I laughed a lot on and off stage with these people. But, there's just a lot of funny moments. Drama presents that, tense situations. Someone says something stupid or someone, says something they shouldn't have said, which happens a lot. But yeah, I hope that helped you, Dan, with your question.
Yeah, there's some nice humor in the production. Yeah, a lot of it comes from us chuckling at Arthur, which is good. What I was going to say to Sydney is that Sheila's character is one of she has some of the few moments where she changes and she is moved by the inspector, and we think that she is going to maybe go on and do some good in her life. And tell us about becoming Sheila. What is it about her you think that how is she able to change? She's just so fascinating watching her go on that arc, because go ahead.
No, I mean, I know I was just agreeing with you. No, I mean, I'm not even sure I can fully compartmentalize her journey. It's a really interesting one, and I think in some way it's extremely painful for her, but I think it is what I like to call growing pains. It is painful for her, but she also wouldn't have it any other way, and I think that is one of my favorite things about her. Becoming Sheila was basically just me watching a lot of Downton Abbey. It was just an excuse to watch all of my favorite period dramas. I don't know, a lot of anxious moments, a lot of oh God, why did they cast me? Oh no, please get me out of here. No, but it was the whole cast is incredibly supportive. Mark is so empowering, and every note that he would give me for Sheila felt like a love letter to the character. And it really just felt like I was like, well, kind of like Sheila. It's like, well, I didn't expect my journey to be this, but I'm gonna grow, I'm gonna change, and we're gonna see where I end up. Yeah, I don't know if that was coherent at all.
Absolutely. And I also love their moments when I'm sorry, Miles is not here, when Sheila is connecting with her brother.
Oh,
Like he's down with the
heartbreaking.
chair and she's kind of holding him, and there was it's because in the beginning there's a lot of kind of brother sister sniping, and oh, she's a good old girl but she loses her temper, and but I love that those moments got really woven in, and you saw a lot of nice warmth there, and it's been said a lot about this play that it's very generational, and like the younger characters have more hope for the future. but I also like that you feel that there's hope for the two of them having a strong sibling relationship moving forward, at least for, as long as
Oh yeah,
everyone's still
absolutely.
with us.
That's one of my favorite parts to play in the show. And it's fun because they don't have a whole lot of dialogue between each other. So it was really fun to discover different moments. And we went through so many different variations of the different acts where they would be on stage together or they would be much further apart. But just the little moments that we get to weave in are very fun. And Miles is, of course, a fantastic scene partner and a fantastic show brother. And it's very easy to act with Miles because you just feel a lot, especially just in this whole cast. You feel so much. It is impossible not to feel in this cast, no matter what kind of day you've had. You show up and you are present. You are emotionally accessible. You have full capacity to feel and full energy to give. And I'm very grateful for everyone for that. I love you all.
Aw. And you kind of can't ask for more than that when you have that kind of a room, a safe room to be and create and feel in. It's a gift. This is wonderful. Audience members, does anyone else have questions that you want to ask? You're welcome to raise your hand, type them into the chat. If not, we will just keep it talking. That's okay. Oh, here's another one. Dan, you always ask such good questions. Dan is a regular at our Zoom events, and we love having him here. Oh, I wish we had Ron Gasparnetti here, our scenic designer. Dan has a question about the set, and Ron always does beautiful work, but I'm sure everyone can talk about it. I'm reading this for those of you who won't see it on YouTube later. Dan asks, can you talk a little more about the beautiful set? It's very striking and stylized and really helps to keep the focus on the characters. But City Lights has also done these plays with more realistic, intricately detailed sets of upper classroom interiors. Was there any consideration of doing something other than the iceberg set? Either a realistic interior, something else abstract, or was the iceberg in mind from the start? So that's probably a question for Mark.
I never wanted it to be literal. That was in my first conversations with Ron. I didn't want it to be literal. I didn't want it to be a Edwardian 1912 interior. And he, because he's so brilliant, he was like, yes, let's go with that. And I suggested, what about something that's monochromatic? And I said, what about white? And he was like, and my original thought was that it would be a way to, I wanted it to be a projection surface, which is what we ended up doing. And so he was like, yeah, that's great. And so he designed this. That was all I gave him as the brief. And then he designed this beautiful sort of Nautilus shaped set. And I was like, that's fantastic. But the white set was always, the monochromatic set was always intended to be something that was that put the characters under a microscope. I wanted it to be kind of clinical. I wanted it to also be kind of and I thought the white was interesting because white is traditionally thought of as a color that represents power and resiliency and fortitude and stuff like that. So like all of Washington, D.C. is, a lot of it is white. So I wanted it to sort of be a counterbalance to who these people really are, and what they're struggling with. And so, and then we decided late in the game, or not late in the game, but we decided pretty early on that we wouldn't have a dining room table, which is usually in the set, because I wanted everyone to be more exposed. I wanted to see everybody more.
Yeah.
I wanted everyone to be open, and out there and in front of everybody. So.
And it makes it even smoother to go into the flashback scenes, and everything just moves very smoothly on that space. If you had a big table in the way,
Yeah, and the table you could if there's a table you can hide behind it. I didn't want anyone to hide. There's nowhere to hide on this set. Once you're on the set, it's just like, here I am. So yeah,
The
and it's
second you
great.
come down the stairs. Oh, and
It's great.
those stairs are beautiful.
I wish you guys could see how good you all look when out in the house. It's because it's so awesome. It's great. It's choice, man. I love it.
And every entrance is even more dramatic. Oh, what does Sybil say? Good evening, Inspector. Wonderful entrance. That entrance is so great. And then in contrast, the inspector sort of slips in under the umbrella on the side. Please, an inspector's called, and it's seemingly harmless at first. I love that moment.
Yeah, and he
I love
wants to eat. Yes, and Mr. Burling wants to eat me alive. Really.
Well, that's why I love when Arthur and the inspector meet for the first time, because Arthur's thinking, well, I don't know you, but yeah, I can completely control this.
Yeah, I can take you.
In a few minutes, he's like
Yeah.
already sweating and worrying and like, what's going on?
And like the entrance of the inspector is the beginning of the sort of blurring of the worlds because he's outside and Edna is talking through a wall or whatever. It's like not literal. She's like talking to him. She's not in the room, she's outside. And so that's the sort of beginning of the blurring of the world that I wanted to try to get across. So
And there's that moment where Eva goes to the seaside, and you have some beautiful little sound design there, and this tragic moment, and yeah, that blurs into that movement into that moment is really lovely and heartbreaking.
Mhm.
Gorgeous. We have a nice comment in the chat from Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. Barbara says, kudos, since it seems that every play I see at City Lights has a cast that thoroughly enjoys being on stage with each other. Keep that up. Have any of you worked together before?
Nope.
No,
Really?
I've worked with Mark, but
I work with
no.
Richard
Yeah, but the actors, you hadn't worked
and
together.
Erik.
No,
Nope.
I didn't notice Doll. She was sitting in a different place, but when she started speaking her role, I thought Judi Dench had just entered the room. Like, this voice is amazing. Who is she?
Oh, was that at the first read through? You were sitting around the
Yeah,
table reading the script? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Judi Dench kind of did walk in.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Are we embarrassing you, Doll?
Yes, very much. I have worked with Sydney and Heren before. I knew Miles, but I've never actually been in a play with Miles. He'd done SBS shows, but he was always sort of in the other show that we were doing. So it's been an amazing experience to finally get to work with Miles. So yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah. It would have been nice to have him here tonight, but it will be also really cool to see him go right into a different role at City Lights, playing a German World War I soldier, which is, World War I soldier is kind of ironic, considering where we think about this story going.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any thoughts about what happens to your characters after the curtain goes down? I mean, I, of course, want to know about Gerald and Sheila. I'm sure everyone's like, does she take the ring back? I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts they want to share about their characters? Or maybe we just live in the moment of the play.
Well, I mean, it's kind of suggested what happens at the final tableau,
Yeah.
I think Erik salutes his parents and walks off. He disappears, and Arthur and Sybil are just in grief-stricken, holding each other, probably like they've never held each other ever in their marriage. And so there's a sense of loss, change. I think it's a really spooky. My Karen had she found that ending because she wasn't expecting that because she's familiar with the play, seen the movie, but that gave her a sense of war and destruction and change, and she said it gave her a lump in her throat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I wish I could. There are parts of this play I wish I could see what it looked like. 'Cause even a video won't do it justice.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm always struck by I think Erik's right. One thing, I mean, I love the David Thewlis film, but it doesn't really give you a sense of the fall that's about to happen in England.
In the world.
Because I mean, it's like everybody was riding high and there's going to be prosperity forever. We're going to be great. And then World War I, and then World War II, and then it just, there were people on rations for years and years. And I mean, just the struggle. And I mean, his big, I love Arthur's big speech at the beginning where he's talking about there's going to, this means an awful lot to me. And he just talks about ships and airplanes and all this stuff that's going to happen. Because it just shows how, like, he's basically being England at that point. He's kind of like, it's that pride goes before a fall. Like, this is going to be like this forever. It's going to be wonderful. And it's not. And I feel like the ending that's been created and the tableau we have, the son going off to war and people being missing that were there before, and Arthur and Sybil finding a comfort in each other that they probably didn't have before. Right?
Yeah.
I can focus on my kids and I don't have to hang out with this lower class guy, but I think through the loss and through that struggle they find each other, and there's maybe something more meaningful there. It's always very, very hard for me when Miles salutes and walks off stage. If he doesn't make eye contact with me, I get very upset because sometimes he'll only look at Erik.
Mm.
And I'll be like, no. Like,
Look at your mother.
like me, look at me. It's it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts because he walks off stage and then it's like, that's it. That's it.
Mm.
It's but it,
Sorry, I'm a mama. That's hitting me right here.
I know.
Yeah,
I am not a mama, but I've got a lot of mama like theater babies and like friends I love, and it's one of them's right there. But it does. It's hard. It is hard, and it's I do like that there's tragedy in the future, but there's also hope.
I love that kind of this that the Arthur and Sybil connecting. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Doll. Well, we are coming up on an hour, and we usually start to wrap up. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts that they'd like to throw into the chat or say? And if you don't, that's okay. Any artists, any last words from our artists? We've got one more weekend left. And then we move on towards Truce, A Christmas Wish from the Great War at City Lights. But it's always sad to see a show close. But yeah, this one's going to be sad. Yes, Richard. Oh, did you have something to say?
Not much. Yeah, it's not sort of evolved yet. So I'll have to sort of. The language isn't there yet to articulate. No offense.
No, I get it.
Swirling.
Yeah, a lot of emotion. I'm glad you brought that up, Erik, about the humor in the play, because it's a hard show, but there are so many human moments. Yeah, I think one of my favorite lines in the whole play is when you say, "What's the weight of the ship?" Like 4 tons. What?
46,800 tons.
46,800 tons. That line delivery gets me every time. That's terrific. And also when Heren is giving her the ring, like, perhaps this will help, and he gives her the ring, and it's lovely. Nice comment from Damien in the chat. Great job, everyone. So many good insights to the show. I understand it better now. Bravo. Thank you, Damien.
Thanks, Damien.
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you all for being here tonight, and break a leg, everyone, in the closing weekend. And then we really hope to see you all back at City Lights again soon, whether it's in the audience or on the stage.